Okay, next up, we have, in recognition of the fact that the Compact's strength is in working as a regional entity, but recognizing that no individual municipality or county is an island, even when they are physically islands. Rather, Miami-Dade County and Monroe are part of the broader Compact network, but Southeast Florida is part of a much bigger entity as well. We share many systems that all need equal attention across our various footprints. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Roman Gastesi, the county administrator from Monroe County, as well as Jack Osterholt, the deputy mayor of Miami-Dade County, as well, for a conversation about partnerships and lessons learned in preparing for and managing cross-boundary risks. Gentlemen.
How you doing?
Okay, hello, Jack. So I guess we're on. First of all, before we get started, I'd like to recognize the recent passing of Florida State Rep and former Broward Mayor and Commissioner Kristen Jacobs. Most of us have been around for a long time, and you're one of those too, Jack. Know that she started this. She was very instrumental in starting this compact, and I'd love to do something in the future to recognize her every year. But certainly it's been a rough year for all of us in many ways, but certainly for her family and everything. We owe her a lot of thanks to starting this. So I know you knew Kristen well. So I guess first, I think to make sure that we're all on the same page, I have a term called knowledge calibration, make sure that we all know what our two counties have been doing. So I'd like to just go over really briefly a couple minutes of what we've been doing. Of course, we've been part of this compact since the beginning. Initially, right away, we needed to get a unified sea level rise projections, and that was quite an undertaking. It took us about 18 months and peer reviewed. We've updated it since. That's very important, that's that baseline. We're looking at the roads analysis down here. Rhonda's gonna follow this conversation with the details of the vulnerability analysis that we're doing and what we're gonna do. And it's gonna include a capital plan. It's gonna include how much it's gonna cost and how long it's gonna take. And that is a very intimidating conversation. We went ahead and got our elevation updated with LIDAR. And then we've done some demo projects that we've tossed out now, and it's getting scary. There's scary numbers. And so that's what we've done so far. The Corps of Engineers also has a feasibility study that they're doing. It's a $3 million, 3-year study that they're doing down here. It'll be done next year, along at the same time as our roads analysis. And right now, the price tag of that is about $5.5 billion. And the cost share for that is about 35% for us, so it's $1.9 million. And includes everything from residential elevations, commercial, floodproofing, purchasing of lamps, and of course, road stabilizations. So big ticket items coming here from Monroe County. The conversation has shifted over the last 10, 12 years from is this happening? That took us a few years to get past that conversation. Then it's how bad is it? Yes, it's pretty bad. And now we're getting to really closely to, by next time this year when we have this conferences, how much is it going to cost? Then the next question is going to be, how are we going to pay for it? So I know you're dealing with the same things. I'll stop there, but that's where Monroe County is right now. And again, Rhonda will have a lot more details on the analysis that we're doing next segment.
Always impressive. How you it's very difficult to think about where we're going, or what we're up to in this world we're operating in today. I think Roman and I have probably been through, I don't know, what, a couple 100,000 tornadoes that we've been through, hurricanes even worse. The behavior that those activities have on our world are significant, because you got to start rebuilding, and it gives you opportunities, but it also gives you a giant headache emotionally and financially. But we've never been here before, and COVID has given us an opportunity that scares me to death. Historically, when something goes wrong, we've got a plan to fix it. It always scares me, but mostly we get it fixed. There's a problem with a water system because of a hurricane. We know how to fix it. When there's a problem with a hospital, when there's a hospital, a problem with all kinds of things, we know how to fix it. I don't know how to fix this one yet. And it's on top of that process that I'd like to talk to you a little bit about today. From our perspective, when this thing started, the mayor put together a group of people and said, okay, so what are we going to do to get this thing back on level ground and going? And so we started dealing with the same issues that we always did when a hurricane came or when any other kind of activity happened. But it wasn't changing anything. The stuff that we were doing wasn't getting where we needed to go. We know how to deal with, for the most part, the impact of the coastal areas. It may take us a while, but we're pretty good at straightening that activity out because this group of 4 counties they've gone after pretty much everything that could go wrong. But let's just talk about the educational system. Hurricane comes, tears up a bunch of schools, got no place for the kids to go. This just takes money. We go through the capital process. We start getting stuff fixed a little at a time, and within a relatively time, things are back to normal. But now we've got a problem where this disease is starting to take us over, and we've got people thinking, well, what are we going to do about this, and what are we going to change? How are things going to get fixed? The problem is the system's broken and the physical activity's broken. And together, 1 and 1 equals 3,000. We look up, and the way we're going to manage it to begin with is we're going to put kids in your kitchen with your grandmother doing differential calculus. We didn't have the capacity, for the most part, to systematically deal with it. While we try to say changes that need to go on physically out there, the size of the place, how it's laid out, what it needs, that was the easy stuff. But how we were going to deal with the pieces of it that weren't traditional is where we are, and we're still there now. For whatever we're doing. Well, when there's a problem, mostly it becomes one that we can start to work on to get the economy going financially. Everything that we could deal with, the easy stuff, hasn't worked here. We're working on it. Things are starting to change now, but it's difficult. So when I was in graduate school, we did all over the country, we were doing a bunch of game theory stuff where we would put a bunch of people in a room. We'd give them a problem to work on. They'd work on it. They'd have elected officials. And after 2 days or 3 days, they decide what they needed to do and all the stuff that they had to deal with when it came to them. I'd hate to think about what you deal with a community that's dealing like this. So I'm here to tell you that we've got the school boards from 4 counties who are working on this, physically working on this, but emotionally working on this. We're trying to deal with how we're going to keep people in jobs, different kind of reasons than we've had, but we're working on this. The kind of things that we've gone through in the past, but it's complicated. And so I guess I want to start the process with, that's one of my favorite things. I've got this tattoo here. It says, it's complicated. I'm going to go right back to you, Roman, see what you got.
Okay, yeah, no, I think you hit it, Jack. It's really complicated. It's something that it hasn't happened in over 100 years to this extent. It's something that, we should recognize, and I'm not going to use, I can't think of another word than proud, but recognize that we just weren't ready for this. It's something that it comes every 100 years, and we have to recognize that it's something that is going to be with us for a while. As you probably do, you meet with your health department on a regular basis. We meet once or twice a week. And every meeting, I start the meeting by saying, okay, his name is Bob Eady. I said, Bob, are we at halftime yet? Using a football or basketball analogy game. And he says, no, we're not even at the 2-minute warning of the first half yet. So we have to be patient. I think it was Bertha or Virginia at the one of the other events earlier that said that folks are turning on themselves. Our patience is being worn thin. And this is not the time to do that, because I think if anything, it's showing that it's going to get worse before it gets better. So yeah, it's distracting, but we have to recognize that this is a 100-year event, if not more. So we'll see what happens. But we need to get back to the, to what we're working on and things that you and I do on a daily basis, and recognizing sea level rise, recognizing the projects that we have to do, recognizing the studies that are coming, and how we're going to pay for these things, and how we're going to implement what needs to be implemented when we do come out of this. And in the meantime, we're still doing our planning, we're still doing our engineers, they're still engineering, they're still designing the projects. So next year at this time, hopefully we'll be out of this, and we'll start some of these meetings and public meetings and things. And even there, we're still having meetings, we're doing virtual things, and we're getting input. But, I recognize this big number. Let's say our number down in Monroe County to adapt to sea level rise for the next 40 to 50 years is probably going to be in the $2 to $3 billion mark. For us, of a county of 75,000 people, that's a lot of money. That's a lot. And that's over a 15, 20-year implementation schedule. Well, guess what? 25 years ago, they were having a similar discussion in the Keys when it came to wastewater, and taking the 30,000 plus septic tanks and converting them to a centralized sewer system. And that was a very intimidating cost of about $400 to $500 million back then. Well, time went forward, 20 years went by, we almost spent $1 billion. We got it done with our partners at the state level and at the federal level. And I think that's something that they wanted us, you and I, to talk about, and how can we collaborate and strengthen our abilities to get that state and federal monies that we need to implement these dollars. And the first thing I always say is, well, we've done it once recently in the last 20 years. For these young folks on the Zoom call with us, they think 20 years is a long time, but wait how fast that passes by, right? In the next 20 years, we can do it again. So how did we do it down here? How did we spend almost $1 billion? Well, it's about a third local resident money. We did assessments on their properties. They paid assessments up front or into their properties. County money, about a third or so. And then what we call OPM, other people's money, about a third. And now state and federal money. I think we have to do that, use that formula more or less moving forward to pay for. I know ours is going to be in the billions. I can imagine what yours is going to be. So have you ever given that any thought? I know that you have Jim Murley as your resiliency officer, and I know you must have these conversations on a regular basis.
I think that the process of changing the planning process to be a planning and budgeting process is the beginning. That's absolutely the same. I guess I was lucky enough to be the deputy state budget director for a while in Broward County, or with the county there, and coming from as a planner, I thought this budget was wonderful, but the back end of it never was done. And so I'm going to follow what you said, and that is to make sure that maybe for a while we focus on the capital budgeting process as the beginning of a good planning process, not just one that we put on another book and see if he can make it look nice on the cover. We got to say, I got 5 years or 8 years to fix this issue, and I'm going to find the money and the process to do that. And which is exactly, I was working for the Regional Planning Council while you guys straightened out your water and sewer system, and it was fascinating to me, just fascinating. And I learned a lot from that process because the politics of it were unbelievable, especially in the northern process where I watched. The physical process were difficult because of the fragility of the area where it's being done. And the big money process for a small community was tough. So you did all 3 of them simultaneously, and it may have taken you a while, but you did it. And I learned a lot of that because you can't do 2. You got to do all 3.
Yeah, and we right now, unfortunately, in some areas in the Keys, and I know some of those folks are watching us as we speak, don't have the luxury of time. That when you say 5, 8 years, they cringe. When I say 15, 20 years, they cringe. Somebody coming at the door. Zoom calls are great, aren't they? And so when we tell them those kind of years, they say, well, but we've been flooding for the last few years. There was one particular area in Key Largo in the Upper Keys that flooded over 90 days in a row last year during king tides. That's 3 months. There were people that were parking their cars along US 1 and slogging it in and out because they didn't want to get the salt water in their cars. So for those folks, we have to do something now. And the question is, what can we do now? And we're trying to experiment. That's the best word I can use, experiment, with some temporary dams. Right now, I invite everybody listening to go on our website and look at some of the press releases that we put out in the last week or so. And these temporary dams are basically these big orange tubes, and we fill them up with water, and we put them in areas where the water tends to come up and try to keep that street as dry as possible. They don't leak as much as sandbags. They seem to be more efficient than sandbags. So those are the kind of things that we're going to be doing in the next few years. Hopefully they work in some applications. Some applications they don't work. As you know, we have very skinny islands and very small islands and very porous rock. So the water comes up through the drains themselves. So you create a dam and you just, filling up. Now you're just creating a pool in the middle of the street. So those are the kind of things that we have to do short term. And then long term, again, the next session, Rhonda will be giving our long-term vulnerability assessment and capital plan. But folks are losing their patience down here in some of the areas. We've seen it. We have a gauge, for those that don't know, down in Key West that USGS put in 1912. So it's been there over 100 years. And it's like the stock market. It shows up and down. It's an actual gauge. It shows up and down, up and down. Over the last 100 years, it's empirical data that down in Key West, the sea level has risen 9 inches. So we have empirical data, and we know we have to do something. And that's what we're trying to figure out down here with all these plans, and then try to figure out what's really going to be tough, again, is trying to figure out how we're going to pay for it.
And what I have seen, very well done, I got to tell you, is how the integration of things that don't usually integrate very well, which is the capital budget and planning process, with a different kind of planning that we've got resiliency, and for communities. You wanted to know all 3 of them? There's all 3 of them, from my perspective, that has shown that if we do all 3 of those, we will have an impact. And it takes the bright, wonderful people that we've had in those 4 communities to make this thing come together. I want to thank them and thank you for being here with us today. I never get to see you anymore. But,
yeah.
The police were much happier, but we'll worry about that. Let's work on all 3 of those things, no matter how big each one is. And let's also look at this damn disease process we're going through and see how that's going to change our future. So I'm already getting people are throwing stuff at me and stuff. So
yeah, we need to
shut up.
We need to wrap it up here, Jack. Always good, pleasure seeing you. Listen to your dogs and your healthy environment. Okay. Have a great afternoon, and to anybody, please go on our website, and I guess Rhonda's coming up. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thanks, everybody.